Hi,
Good.
everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're just waiting for people to filter into the room, and Dr. Curry and I will begin our presentation shortly. Great. Well, it's 2:30. I think it will begin the presentation now. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar to discuss the statewide system of support, and in particular, the leadership consultant position, working with the statewide system of support. We're excited to hopefully tell you a lot more about the role and about the work itself, and have a few minutes for questions and answers after the fact. As we jump into the webinar, I just want to reassure everyone that your participation in this webinar is completely anonymous. While we can definitely see who has attended and who will be viewing the webinar, there's no opportunity for other participants to know if you submitted a question or that you're participating in any way, shape, or form. So I just wanted to reassure everyone that if you do submit a question, it won't appear to the other panelists. Dr. Curry and I will be the only two that really see the question. And we'll certainly keep your identity anonymous. So, Dr. Curry, you want to advance the slide there?
There we go.
Great. So my name is Kim Perron. I'm the president and owner of SchoolWorks, and I'm joined by Dr. Charmie Curry, who's the associate commissioner of the statewide system of support. Dr. Curry, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Kim. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Statewide System of Support Hiring webinar. We look forward to learning more about your potential candidacy, and really excited to share about the work that we're doing here in SSoS as part of our larger state agency vision for ensuring success for our students. And so I'm really excited to tell you all about what we do and how we do it in service to kids. Just a little bit about me. I've been in this role for about 1.5 years, coming last from a district in the role of a inaugural equity officer for the district. And so have great passion for instruction, have been a classroom teacher, coach, and school leader, and central office leader as well. And all these things factor into how I see this work and what brings me to it every day. So I hope this webinar is valuable for you, and we look forward to sharing more about the SchoolWorks and DESE partnership that makes this role possible.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we do have a partnership with DESE in this work. And while Dr. Curry is going to be talking a lot about the role, and technically the leadership consultants that we do hire in this role will be SchoolWorks employees, you would be working directly for and on behalf of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education statewide system of support. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the ways in which SchoolWorks is involved. But right now, Dr. Curry is going to talk about the most important thing, which is the work itself.
Sure. Thank you, Kim. So we really want to start with what guides our work in the agency. And so we begin with our educational vision, which last spring, our Commissioner Jeff Riley, along with internal stakeholders who were very much a part of the creation and dissemination of this vision, to really articulate what is it that we're trying to do for students here in Massachusetts, right? So it's essential that everything that we do here as an agency comes back to this vision that we have for our kids in Massachusetts. And that vision really is centered on the principles that we know that many of our kids are not getting what they need, right? Massachusetts is often first in the nation for a lot of milestones in education, but we know that that first also means there are some gaps here in our state. And so in order to focus on ensuring that all kids are getting what they need, this vision articulates the need for students to feel known and valued in their school experiences, to receive an education that is relevant in real world and interactive and connected, deeply connected to who they are as people, right? And what they want to accomplish for their lives. And so this vision is centered on an equity focus, because we know that students in our state need instruction that is culturally and linguistically sustaining, right? It's not just enough to get basic run-of-the-mill instruction that doesn't really speak to who students are and all the assets that they and their communities bring to the learning landscape. And that is combined with high expectation, this knowledge that all of our students can achieve at high levels. And as a state agency, we are charged with creating the conditions in which districts can clear the path for all of this work to happen in their setting, right? To provide direction to principals, school leaders, and teachers, and the community about what education should be all about in Massachusetts and how do we get there. And so in SSoS, we take it really seriously that we are the hands and feet of this vision, along with other colleagues in different units within the agency. We are uniquely charged to focus on the schools and learning communities that most need our support. But before we go into that, I just want to give you a quick overview of where SSoS sits in the organizational hierarchy. And so SSoS is part of the Center for School and District Partnership, which is led by Como Basine. And as one of the offices in the center, our office engages with districts through regional assistance. And so you'll hear about that regional assistance model of support that SSoS provides. So in SSoS, you have me and I have a team, a leadership team. We work together to achieve the goals and priorities of our office. And that includes our two regional assistance directors. The state is split into a coastal and West Central region, and each region has an assistant director. And we also have an office that focuses on our strategy, which is the strategic planning integration office. And our leadership consultants, this role that you're here in the webinar for today, is deeply connected to the regional assistance work. So the leadership consultants report to one of our assistance directors. And so to go back about why we exist, SSoS exists for the purpose of changing outcomes for students, right? Last year, we, through some of our work, we were able to build a partnership overview that just clearly articulates what is it that we do and what is the role of the partnership that we have with districts. It's really important for us to view this work as a partnership, right? And this is a vision that the agency carries, that the state is a partner, right? The way that we lead our districts is through influence, right? Not compliance, although there are compliance arms of the agency, certainly. But through SSoS, we really aim to influence the actions and behaviors of adults in school districts who have the agency to set conditions for what happens in classrooms, right? And we take that mantle very seriously. Now, so our job, what we do is we support districts who have schools that require assistance, right? And that is something that is a part of our Mass General Law statute around these districts require support based on their performance. And so we help districts identify clear priorities for instruction that are rooted in grade appropriate instruction that is culturally and linguistically sustaining, and instruction that really helps students identify belonging, academic belonging specifically. We support districts to be specific in their focus, in their instructional priorities, honing in on these areas of supporting instructional leadership teams, helping districts adopt high quality instructional materials and implement those materials with what we call skillful implementation. And we help districts build fluency in a tool of our assistance, right? This is a coherence guidebook that is for our center, right? That really articulates a systems level path to help districts plan for and ensure students have access to deeper learning. How do we do this? In SSoS, we are deeply committed, and in our center as a whole, we are deeply committed to the framework of coaching for equity, which is the work of Elena Aguilar, to help us operationalize equity and racial equity in the schools that are identified in the accountability system as requiring assistance, right? And this means that in everything that we do, we go back to a through line that we need to be addressing systems that perpetuate inequities in our schools, right? It's very clear that all of our kids are not getting what they need. And it's not because of deficits that students have, it's because of systems that are not working for them. And so we have to help districts identify those systems and address them precisely with evidence-based practices to clean up those systems, and sometimes to dismantle those systems, really, to ensure that students get full access and opportunity to achieve the outcomes that they need for their lives, for their careers, for college, whatever their choice may be. And so we spend a lot of time on our team getting very specific, coaching with one another, doing scenario-based role plays, engaging with mentor texts and research that helps us to maintain our focus on interrupting inequities and oppressive systems in our schools, and recognizing the power dynamics at play, right, as a state agency with our colleagues in the field, and using these evidence-based strategies to navigate all these things. And so our office, like any office in our center, sets goals for the year, and these goals are representative of this school year. We've been supporting ILTs mostly at the district level, right? Focusing on how districts should set the conditions for what happens in their schools. And so providing district leaders with the tools to develop an instructional leadership team that really carries the instructional vision for the learning community, and helping districts adopt high quality instruction materials. We see that as a baseline for school improvement, right? Students must have access to basic high quality instructional materials. And then that opens the door for teachers to learn about how to skillfully implement these materials in ways that are culturally and linguistically sustaining, right? All of this through the resource of our internal resource of the Coherence Guidebook, while we coach for equity and keeping equity and racial equity at the front as values that guide our work, both in a value sense and in an outcome sense, right? Our work should be shifting outcomes for equity and racial equity. So a sense of who do we serve? Our caseload, typically differs a little bit from year to year, but mostly this past year, we've served 22 districts. As you can see, they're split into the coastal and west central region. And so for our leadership consultants who are interested in this role, you would likely be assigned to a region and supporting roughly 3 to 5 districts in a region, and having the capacity to be able to drive to 3 to 5 districts within the course of the workday or the work week, right? Depending on district engagements and such. But this is just an overview of the districts that have been in our portfolio for the last school year. And every year, based on accountability data, our districts may shift, right? Some districts may, due to their improvement, may come off our caseload, right? Because they no longer have schools that require assistance. Yes. For some districts have more schools, and sometimes it takes a little bit more, and they are within our support for some more years. So what does it look like? The life of a regional assistance person, leadership consultant. And so typically we expect our folks to engage with districts through the district ILT work. Folks can participate in learning walkthroughs that focus on understanding where the instructional priority is taking root in classrooms, debriefing interactions with the districts, supporting, district ILTs to implement their instructional programming, right? And helping them figure out where are their gaps to our vision? Where is the instructional priority taking root, and where isn't it, and why is that? We support leadership consultants are, they're part of the SSoS team. We have monthly team meetings, some of them in person, some of them online, and we're all part of the center. So we have monthly center meetings as well. Some days they're full day retreat meetings, and we meet in the middle because we are a statewide team, and so some of the regional assistance work also includes internal meetings where leadership consultants are planning with their directors and fellow teammates on a district team. So typically we have about 2 to 3 leadership consultants per district team, supported by a director or an assistant director. And then what we've done this year for the first time, we have assigned a lead leadership consultant, which is an opportunity for some leadership development within our team, to be the point person for the district. And what that means is that person does a lot of the coordination of meetings, coordination of internal agendas and external agendas, and sort of is that person who leads the small internal team to support the district's work. And that's been a structure that we built in this year that we're learning a lot about as we, continue to strengthen the work of our model. And so a quick profile of an ideal candidate with the desired knowledge and skills that we're looking for. I mean, you can see everything on here, and we've bolded some things to kind of elevate their importance for us as we think about hiring and screening for potential candidates. I think that through our educational vision, our agency has made it very clear that our focus on closing equity and opportunity gaps has to start with centering the experience of students who have not historically gotten what they needed from our schools, right? And so an ability to do this is very, very important. It's a chief role that we all play, regardless of our position on our team. This is everybody's work. And the ability to surface and really understand equity detours and how they can operate as barriers to achieving equity and racial equity is also something that's really important for our team. This idea of having high expectations for students and adults is essential, right? We are not here to make people feel good about inequitable outcomes for kids. We are here to help them identify that and present often alternate realities, right? To have them think about why they're not achieving the types of outcomes for students that they need, right? We are here to be critical friends in our partnership with districts. Having a deep command of standards-aligned curriculum, instruction, assessment is really important, right? We are looking for people who believe in our values that students should have access to high-quality instructional materials, right? As a baseline for getting solid teaching and learning, right? We need to be able to recognize what effective pedagogy looks like in the classroom and how to coach district leaders to identify it, scale it, and where it's not happening, how to call it out and remediate for it. As I said before, we believe in the value of the state being a partner, right? A partner, a critical friend, and having a warm demander stance, right? We are here to surface realities in service to kids, right? We are about what happens for children. They are our chief constituent. Everything that we do in partnership with districts is rooted in the deep love for children and wanting to see that they get everything that they need to be successful and that there aren't barriers in their path. We're looking for people who can communicate all of this narrative about student achievement in a very compelling way that is centered on an equity imperative, that we don't really have a choice when we think about closing these gaps for our kids. We have to be rooted in these values, not just on paper, but in how we go about our business, right? So it's both the being and the doing, and to carry this vision in a way that inspires our colleagues in the field and gives them tangible tools to work on to move adult practice, right? And we do that by building trust through the work, right? The work allows us to build trust by being leaders who are accountable, being leaders who carry themselves with integrity, who do the things that they say they're going to do, being leaders who are generous to our partners and also hold our partners accountable. Being able to communicate effectively across lines of difference. We are a growing diverse team because that is the landscape of our communities that we serve. The students in the Commonwealth are rapidly diversifying. They have been for many years, and we want our teams to reflect the diversity of our Commonwealth, reflect the diversity of our students, right? Across many lines of difference. And so communicating along these lines of difference, being able to work along these lines of difference, and being able to note that this is a part of learning and growing is a really important part of our work. We take every opportunity to reflect on our team and in our center about how social identity impacts how we show up for our work, impacts how we show up for our district partnerships, and we want to be interrogating that all the time. And continuous learning, right? As a state agency, we are a learning organization. We become extinct the minute we stop learning. So we need to model that continuous learning mindset in everything that we do. Hence, we are always thinking about how we open up ourselves to feedback, being able to give and receive feedback from our peers on our team, and especially from our colleagues in the field. We make time for that feedback because we really believe that feedback is important. And having that two-way engagement with our core stakeholder groups, including students, and hearing from students. We've done some things where we've heard from students in our center. In SSoS, we have a district experience survey that we do to hear from districts twice a year, right? How are we doing? How are we helping you meet your goals? And how can we shift our practices where needed? So that's a basic profile of who we're looking for. I'll turn it over to Kim now to talk about the benefits overview and what SchoolWorks offers as the employer of record.
Thank you so much. So as Dr. Curry indicated, SchoolWorks would be the employer of record for this role. And essentially, we provide a couple of different aspects of support to DESE and to the employees who are doing this tremendous work. Essentially, we will process your payroll, we're the benefits administrator, and we also provide some technology support. In terms of benefits, what are the kinds of things that you would be entitled to in this role? We have a standard policy of 4 weeks of vacation for this role, and you also get 12 holidays that we strongly encourage you to align with the Massachusetts state holiday calendar. So that's kind of the time off, the personal time off. There is also sick time available and things like that. And if you have specific questions about that, as we go through the hiring process, you can certainly let us know, and we'd be happy to provide any of those details to you. In terms of retirement, it's important to note that this position, because SchoolWorks is a private for-profit company, this position will not allow you to continue in the teacher retirement system that you may currently be involved in if you are currently employed by a district or another public entity within the state of Massachusetts. Instead, what we offer is a 401k with a 3% match. So that means that you are entitled to contribute the maximum individual contribution, but regardless of whether or not you do that, SchoolWorks will contribute a 3% of your salary to the 401k. We also offer health and dental benefits. SchoolWorks currently covers 70% of the cost of the health, and I can provide you details on the dental if that's something that you're interested in, but those benefits are included as well. And then we provide a laptop and other tech support. And I think it's important to note that, most of the technology that we provide is actually the hardware. Because you'd have a DESE or a state email, a state issued email, some of those software things would actually, you'd work with the DESE IT team to get immediate tech support. For example, if you had a problem with your email or so on and so forth. But it's important to note that you are technically part of the DESE team, and so you would have a state-based email address as well. So that's a little summary of the benefits. And again, if you have any detailed questions at this point, you can certainly submit a question through the question and answer box, or as you go through the hiring process, we're available to answer any of those questions that you might have as well.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Yes.
So we're gonna get started with some Q&A.
Yeah.
There's already
A couple of questions have come through. So the first one is, how do you assign leadership consultants to districts?
Yes, that's a great question. We assign folks based on district need. It is our preference that a leadership consultant would work in the district, work in the region that the district is located. And we do have a telework policy here that based on what's written in our job description, we need people to live within driving distance of the districts that they will be serving. So what that means is that you have to be proximate to the location, and also driving to, even though most leadership consultants are not necessarily coming to the state office in Everett, but you need to be able to get there if we have sometimes we do have meetings there and such. And so, yeah, so it's based on district need. And we do try to make every effort to make sure that people are assigned to the region in which they live, because this is a role that has a lot of driving, right? And so that's really important to understand that some of our leadership consultants, based on the time of the year, are driving every day to districts. And so when the weather gets bad and things like that, folks still have to get out there. So that's important to keep in mind.
Charmie, did you want to talk at all about if a candidate or a leadership consultant has experience within a district, how that would impact your assignment?
Yeah, so typically, the business rule is that we try not to assign leadership consultants to districts that they have worked with within the last couple of years. And really that's to ensure unnecessary conflicts of interest and things like that. So if you're coming from directly a district, and even if you're in the region, you probably will not be assigned to that district.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And the next question is, will we have access to this presentation after the webinar? And the answer to that question is yes. Stephanie, who you can see her photo up here with us, she will be sending out a recording of the webinar to everyone who has registered. In addition, it will also be posted on YouTube with a link provided and accessible at the job application page. So we'll provide some information about how to apply. And right below, as part of that job application web page on the SchoolWorks website, there will be a link to the recording. So you can view it as many times as you'd like, and certainly share it with anyone you think might be interested as well. The next question is, can you talk a little bit more about coaching for equity?
Sure. So, oops, sorry, just move the slides. Let's get back there. So coaching for equity, this is a framework from Elena Aguilar. We actually have done professional learning with her text for the last couple of years, at least 3 years at this point. And so Elena's work speaks to transformational coaching, and we really engage with the look-fors in those domains of coaching, which includes like understanding a coach's sociopolitical consciousness and how a coach does that, and how a coach manages power dynamics. And so that tool is something that really grounds our work. So when we look at the performance of our leadership consultants, the language of those indicators are included in our goals, right? So we really want to see how our leadership consultants are managing power dynamics in districts in service of elevating leverage points for change, right? Change management is part of that. And how our leadership consultants are also developing their own sociopolitical consciousness, right? To be people who are elevating equity and racial equity in conversations in the context of teaching and learning, and helping leaders see where there are gaps in their system. So it's really integrated. That's the best way that I can describe it, is that, so when we've had new leadership consultants come on, we do provide the text, and we give space in onboarding to pull out sections of the text that have been essential to our development. And that's something that becomes an expectation for everybody, that the tools of that framework guide our strategy. It guides our guidance materials. So, I mean, one of the things, a tangible thing I'll say, Elena's work in general, it's so rich. We use some of her tools around the coaching lenses, right? She has, she's built a lot of other research into her work and practice. But one of the lenses, she has these coaching lenses, which she says that coaches need to think about a couple different things when they coach. And one of those lenses is the lens of systemic oppression, right? Understanding how the landscape has been rooted in systemic oppression. And when you're coaching in that context, what questions do you need to elevate for your clients, right? And those, our clients are districts, or the lens of adult learning, or the lens of change management, right? Those are things we've incorporated into our assistance framework, that our leadership consultants get practice at, so that they are engaging in those tools in the field.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, how do you measure the impact of the consultant's work with the partner districts?
Great question. I love that. I love that people are already raising a question about impact, because that is certainly something on our mind, and that's how we design our system for impact, right? The experiences of students in the districts that we serve, in the schools in the district that we serve, should be changing as a result of our support, right? So one of the things there are lots of indicators to look at, and I think we are continuing to build a very clear portfolio that speaks to the data that we look at to assess our impact. One of those things is the criterion reference target, right? So when we look at schools accountability data, we look at the progress that they make toward their targets, right? We want to see our schools make progress toward their targets. That's one tangible outcome, right? There are other areas of growth. So like, for instance, we also want to see districts who have multiple schools require assistance. We want to see some of those schools grow over time and shed their status, if you will, right? Which means that they are above the 10th percentile. We want to see growth in school percentiles and such. So just a few examples, but there are other things that that encompass like what we think about when we think about impact. Some of that comes directly from our districts with qualitative data, right? When we ask our districts about feedback, one of the questions we ask is assess us on how our team is helping you address systems that perpetuate inequities, right? And they'll tell us, right? We have some raw quantitative data about the percentage of districts that said, gave us feedback on our team's ability to do that, right? And so that's another marker of our practice and how it's impacting districts.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question is, I am curious about what the warm demander pedagogy looks like in practice, especially from an accountability standpoint on DESE's end. Can you give tangible examples about what this looks like in a sample engagement?
I think it's really hard to give a concrete example, because a concrete example in some ways, because our district contexts are so different. But I think the basic value of the warm demander is the knowledge of carrying high expectations, right? This living in the both and. I can partner with you, and I want to be supportive, and I can also hold you accountable for the outcomes that you're stating for kids, right? I think that's the essence of it, right? And I think what that means is, for instance, if we're doing mid-year progress monitoring in a district, and you're looking at the district's data, and they stated that they wanted to have these outcomes, and you're looking at the data and they're not seeing those gaps, it means lifting that up for them, right? Presenting a different reality than what they may be experiencing or seeing themselves, right? Hey, these are the outcomes that you set out in your plan. these aren't the outcomes we're seeing at the mid-year. Tell us about what explains that gap and what plans you have to close it, right? So we can partner with you, we can provide you with frameworks to think about your systemic improvement work, and we can also hold you accountable to the things that you said you're going to do for kids.
Right. The next question, do we set our own schedule in visiting schools, or do we make a set schedule before the school year begins? Is there a time period in the year where we visit schools more than other times in the year?
Yeah, another great question. So our schedules, again, this is a great question because I think when we perhaps, and I don't know, but the consultant title may imply greater freedom than actually exists in this role in terms of time, right? So we support school districts, and school districts get started on their days early. So you may find a situation where you may need to be at a DILT meeting at 7:30 because that's when the district meets, right? And so if you're in the district team, you're gonna have to be at that meeting, right? And the teams figure out like who's going to be where and when. But so you may also have an ILT that meets at 2:30 in the afternoon and runs till like about 4:30. And so we typically say to our leadership consultants that you should expect business hours between 8 and 4:30, right? But understand that sometimes districts need something else, right? And we have to be able to flex to their needs. And so your schedule is pretty much set by what the district needs in terms of your physical traveling. And then we have internal meetings throughout the day, right? We try to keep our internal meetings within that 8 to 4 frame. So we're not usually having meetings past 4 o'clock or anything like that. That's very rare. But if a district, I certainly have been in a district at 4:30 because I was visiting an ILT, right? Following a school visit with classrooms and then moving straight into an ILT. So it depends, but I think the general frame is that 8 to 4 and being flexible to attend to what district needs for their engagements.
Right, thank you.
Oh, I didn't answer the second part. Is there a time period? Yeah, I think that our busiest time is between September to probably March, right? And I think once the MCAS, the testing windows open, things free up a little bit just because that's where schools are. We don't typically engage with schools during vacation weeks and things like that. In the summer, try to give folks a break and kind of restart our engagements in August when people return and stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is, will the leadership consultant lead professional training with school administrators?
Great question. These questions are just, I have to say, like, these are really good questions. You're lifting up some things that yes, you should be asking. So that is such a great question. We do not offer professional development to districts. That is not our role, right? So we want to be very clear about that. Our role is to build district capacity. So we do not do professional learning for districts. We really stay focused on our model, which is to support instructional leadership teams, right? Support districts in their adoption and implementation of high quality instructional materials, right? And really focusing on how they are creating the conditions for success in their schools and how they are monitoring that throughout their year. So that is not something that we do. So thank you so much for asking that.
When doing assessments, is it more mixed methods, qualitative, quantitative, or does it depend more on the specific assignment?
I'm not sure I understand the context of assessment. Assessing, because we, and maybe this is regarding progress monitoring. I'm not sure, but I'll try my best to answer. It's definitely not like a traditional research study, because when I hear those terms, it makes me think of a research study, but our progress monitoring efforts are based on what a district says they're going to monitor, right? So one thing I don't think I shared was that our districts who have schools that require assistance are required to submit a plan to us every June. And so they have to articulate an instructional priority, right, which we support them with implementing. And they have to articulate a vertical alignment strategy, which tells us who's going to do what, What are going to be the benchmarks for performance, right? What outcomes are you looking to see shift as a result of your focus on this instructional priority? So we help them monitor their work, right? Because these are outcomes that they have decided based on their data, and we definitely coach and support them in their development of these outcomes connected to their instructional priority. But the progress monitoring work is really their work that they are doing in service to their instructional priority that we come alongside, right?
Mhm.
So that's how I would describe that. I'm not sure, but
It
if
was
not,
progress
please.
monitoring. Yeah,
Okay,
the person who inquired or clarified it was progress monitoring. They were interested.
okay, great. Hopefully that was sufficient.
Good. Couple more questions here, Charmy. This is
Sure.
another good one. What training will be provided to the leadership consultants to best equip them to do this work and to ensure that all leadership consultants are doing the work in the same or similar fashions?
Yes, another gem. So we have our monthly meetings as an SSoS team, and we have our monthly center meetings, and we experience those. We certainly set up those meetings as professional learning, right? So a lot of our learning takes place in those meetings. So our monthly meetings are either 2 to 4, so 2-hour chunks, and then typically we have like 4 meetings a year in person, and those are full day meetings, which is like usually 9 to 3. So all of those encounters every month are professional learning for our team, and so that's how we get it done, right? And so when we meet, our team is statewide, so we usually meet in the middle of the state, somewhere in like central, close to central Mass, so that folks are kind of having equal distance to drive, and we spend our time learning together based on our strategy, right? Our learning is very connected to the work that we're trying to accomplish in schools and districts. So we will talk about, you know, we have all these tools. We have a tracker to help us keep track of districts' progress monitoring efforts. We will talk about what is it that we want to see in the progress monitoring meeting. We have tools that we've built that centralizes the experience, right? So we have guidance documents that we build and we test out together. We also, some of our learning takes place in working groups, right? We have some working groups on our team that are totally optional. Folks can opt into. We have a professional learning working group on our team, and we have an racial equity working group on our team that leadership consultants can opt into. Those are other learning opportunities that really inform the work, and it's very practice-based. Yeah.
Great. So we've got about 3 more questions and about 4 more minutes. So
Okay.
speed round here.
Yeah.
Do you take into account the consultant's identity markers to match districts? For example, if my ed leadership journey is grounded in supporting schools with majority Hispanic Latinx students, I'm guessing, is it likely that we will be placed in a similar district?
That's a really good question. I don't think we've typically done that. I think our placement is really based on the district needs, and we certainly take into account the experiences of our leadership consultants and the expertise that they're bringing to help us. But I think the foremost thing that we look at is really, what is the district need? Because on our team, we are considered generalists, right? So some of us may have a more specialized background. We may be people who have really have been coaches of science instruction per se, or we've been instructional coaches in general. We've been principals, we've been assistant principals, but in this role, it's very generalized, right? Because we're in the field, and the specialization is not something that can be carried over in every district context. But what grounds us is our centralized model of support that everyone, regardless of your particular instructional background, can learn, right, to engage in the school and district improvement efforts. So that's the placement is really based on the team's need and the district needs, and like matching up, having a good matchup, right, with consultants, and we know the strengths, and we do build our teams in that way too, thinking of what strengths will play off other strengths, right? And we build our teams with that manner as well. And, we say to our leadership consultants, like, our work is grounded in what the districts need. So sometimes people may start off with one team and have to make some shifts. Believe it or not, lots of transitions happen in districts. at sometimes inconvenient times.
Mhm.
And we have found that we have had to flex on our team. We have to be able to flex. So sometimes people are moved from one district to the next because of transitions internally or transitions externally. And I think we do that with a humane lens, right? Really caring for our people first, and also keeping in mind what our district needs to be successful.
Great. Okay, two more questions. Are the goals for each school similar enough for leadership consultants to calibrate and work together on action planning, or have you found that each school is very unique?
So we don't work with schools directly, right? So that's one thing. We work directly with districts, and our work is really centered at the district level, right? And so I think district contexts can be very volatile, right? We see lots of transition in leadership, and those things all inform the context. So I think when we're thinking of grouping, last year we did build coaching goals for our districts based on what we have collectively seen in the field and based on research practices, right? And so the teams that are assigned to these districts, they work together to identify a coaching goal for the district for the year that would ground their support in the context of our support model, right? And so that was a very kind of differentiated way to say, like, districts need different things, but they're not so different, right? We can sort of group districts in certain categories of need, right? And let's build a coaching model that speaks to the needs that we see, and then sort of assign districts to goals that match those general needs. And of course, then you get more specific as you work with the district teams, but broadly, we've been able to do that. And that has helped us really focus on how to prioritize districts, right? Because within our 22, every district can't have the same level of priority, right? There are things in certain districts that we want to that are more heightened. And so we sort of think about how we effectively allocate our resources, whether by people or by funds and things like that.
Right. And the last one, I know we're a few minutes over. If you need to run, please go ahead, we'll send you the recording. But just a last question here, Charmie, is do the team meetings include critical friends groups for consultants to problematize around challenges with individual caseloads?
Yeah, so I mean, we do all of that in our team meetings, and we do have mixed groupings. So we try to get people to be grouped with other consultants they don't typically work with for that purpose, for learning. And so we do that fairly often. I think most of our meetings we're sort of in cross-regional groups. Like we're not just set with like just the region that we're in. So we constantly have that opportunity.
Great. Great. Well, I think we've tackled all the questions. Thank you to everyone
Yay!
who submitted. They were really fantastic questions that I think
They
helped us
were.
begin a little bit more to the work. Before we go, I just want to go over one more time the process for applying. We hope that you are very interested in applying for these roles after hearing more about the work itself. What you would need to do is go to the SchoolWorks website, which is schoolworks.org. And within the SchoolWorks website, you're going to see a tab, I believe it says jobs up at the top, and you would click on that tab, and then there's going to be a link to the application page for this role. So you would upload your resume, your cover letter, and I believe there may be a couple of questions there. You can also view the job description, and very shortly we'll also include a link to this webinar so that you could watch the webinar again if you'd like to review any of this information. The screening process for the role will begin, I believe, within a matter of days. So if you've already submitted your application, you may have heard that we're waiting until after the webinar to begin screening applicants. So we'll be starting the screening process shortly. There would be a phone screen with a representative from SchoolWorks. Her name is Nadia Lofton. Some of you may have been in contact with her already. She'll be reaching out to let you know potential next steps. And for those candidates that do move forward after the screening process, there will be a performance task that you would need to complete. There will be a virtual first interview, a virtual second interview, each of which lasts approximately an hour. And then hiring decisions will be made, I believe, on a rolling basis. Is that right, Charmie?
Mhm. Yes.
Correct. All of the contracts would start July 1st. So just so that everybody's clear. So you may, potentially be offered a position, in the springtime, but the contract wouldn't begin until July 1st. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. It's also really important. I just want to also note from SchoolWorks point of view and our benefits, the way we manage our benefits, the vacation time is accrued vacation time. So that doesn't mean that you would start July 1 with 4 weeks of vacation to be able to take advantage of. So just something to consider as you're making your plans and moving through this process. And on that note, I don't know, Charmie, if there's anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up and say our thank yous.
No, I think we've covered it all, and I'm just by the nature of the questions, I'm super excited to hear from all of you. So thank you for making the time today to join us to learn about the work that DESE is leading in partnership with SchoolWorks toward our Ed Vision.
Yes, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your attendance and engagement in this process, and we're looking forward to next steps and hearing from you through the application process. So thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.